Hey, what's up? Zach here, and today I've got the New Balance 2WXY Volume 2, and these are all the reasons you should or maybe should not buy them. Here we go. Now, the first thing that really struck me about the Volume 2s, besides the pretty radical colorway, which I really like, was just the feeling I got when I first put the uppers on. They're much more of a smooth feeling, almost kind of like a flowable upper. They're very snug on the tie down because all the eyelets are integrated. The tongue is really padded. It has these big bunted pieces. It's actually 2 layers of bunting here in the uppers. Now, what I like about it is it's more of just kind of like a mesh weave all the way in the uppers. So they do give you a lot of support. However, they're not really heavy or more hardened like some other uppers, a lot of support, because they rely on a lot of hard pieces of foxing kind of placed in the uppers to give support. Because this is all just kind of one mesh weave that goes all around there, it's all locked in as one unit. So the shoe kind of, no pun intended, but flows, like I just said, when you're moving in it. And the upper kind of just moves as an extension of your foot, which I really like. And because that orientation right here in the forefoot is more horizontal versus the honeycombing and the rest of it, it also bends really well and there's really no break-in. So in terms of the uppers, I mean, New Balance did hit a home run on these, especially versus the first version, but just against any other shoe on the market right now as well. The one gripe I do have is because this is a mid-top, I do wish they would have put more eyelets here in the ankle just for a little more choice, or if you wanted to tie that down a little more, or just give yourself more of a customized feel. With this, you only get one eyelet. However, the tie down is good, the lockdown is fine. Just some people do like to kind of customize that a little more, which I thought would have been just one little better benefit from that. And on the upper durability test, the Dremel 10 seconds highest grit sandpaper, there is a drag guard on the toe cap. However, the Dremel did bite through it pretty good right into the honeycomb mesh layer. So these aren't the worst out there for dragging, but they are gonna start picking up a little bit of friction on outdoor courts, so just watch out for that. Now, I have to hand it to New Balance on the midsole teardown. This was definitely the most colorful teardown I've done this year. Now, the midsole is an entire bed of fuel cell foam, which is a TPU-based foam. That's that plastic-based foam. So a lot of energy absorption, not so much energy return, but durable absorption it does give you. Now, no pun intended, but that's an all bed of fuel cell until you get to the absorb layer in the heel. Now, this is more of a rubberized compound. Even the orange here, this is a mixture of rubberized components with foam. And then that center T-bar here, that is all rubber. Now that is right here where your calcaneal tubercle would go. And if you're asking yourself what a calcaneal tubercle is, that is what your doctor probably says is a heel spur. If you go in for heel pain, that's right where that thing sits. So as long as you get the sizing right, which we'll talk about, that should do pretty well for you in the heel area for impact protection. Now, if you do notice, there is a shank here right on the bottom. Now, remember, that is bottom loaded and it is pretty flexible. So it is gonna give some support to the midsole. However, most of the support in this midsole is just coming from the foam. And because of this fuel cell shank and everything else set up, it's really no surprise on the jump height test, only 34.7 centimeters, which honestly isn't bad. It's just not really elite. It just shows you this shoe is more meant for impact protection, maybe a little more low to the ground feel versus more violent push-off force, more cantilever bending, more of a stiffer setup. But by far my favorite part of the 2WXY Volume 2 is the outsole tread. It is this really broad, wide set radial pattern here in the forefoot. I really like the linear tread kind of mixed with some more of the horizontal, then goes into the radial right under your big toe joint where you need to pivot. But back here, it's just these dots here of tread, and they actually correspond to where these T-bars go down of rubber. And these are all correlated with kind of parts of your heel bone that would get the most stress, which I just absolutely love as a foot doctor and someone that really geeks out on anatomy. Now, what I like about this is in the heel, you really don't need to use the heel for more nimble movement. You just need the heel to grip when you want to pivot really hard. You just don't want it to slip out from underneath of you. And when you have these really big circular patterns there, they almost suction cup into the ground. Now that's not great for more fluid movement or more nimble movement, and that's why you don't see it a lot of times in the forefoot, except for the PG6. But when you have that in the heel, it does allow for a lot of confident grip, and I really like that. And I like that they chose the clear in the heel versus the dyed in the forefoot, because you do kind of get the best of both worlds there. Now, just as I suspected, the grip on the 2WXY Volume 2 is much improved from the first version. That real sharp, narrow tread and that radial pattern gives tremendous grip on pretty much any surface. Now, that combined with a little bit more of a wider footprint in the forefoot, it's a little more broad, almost like a paw or the palm of your hand, really kind of sinks into the court and gives you tremendous balance. And now, like we saw from the jump height test, just because the shoe doesn't give a lot of violent push-off or jump height doesn't mean it doesn't have a place on the
court, because these definitely kind of prowl the court, almost like the Jordan 13s, and pretty much better balance than a lot of other shoes we've seen this year, just because your foot can kind of feel the ground. So the shoe kind of enhances your own footwork rather than doing anything to you.
And speaking of all that grip, if you look at the shuttle test, 14.66 seconds in these on a pretty slick outdoor court, and a shoe that really doesn't give a lot back to your foot. It doesn't give you a lot of push-off force or kind of violent movement, and that's just because the shoe has such good grip and good confidence around corners that your foot and your muscles can kind of do the rest. This shoe just really gives you a stable base and just something you know is not going to buckle. But what I find most interesting about the tread profile, the Volume 2s, is its durability profile. If you just look at the outsole durability test, the Dremel 10 seconds highest grit sandpaper, about 1 millimeter of damage in the forefoot on the dyed rubber, and about 1 millimeter of damage on the translucent rubber. However, if you look at the durometer of the rubber, which is the measure of the hardness, in the forefoot on the dyed rubber, 17.5, which is super hard. And in the rear foot, 11.5, which is kind of like a medium hard compound. But the interesting thing is typically with a durometer that high, the Dremel really shouldn't bite through rubber at all. It should just kind of scuff it a little bit. However, because the treads are so thin here in the forefoot, there's really nothing protecting them, so the Dremel can kind of bite into them. So even though these are going to be just as durable as any grip-focused shoe on an outdoor asphalt court, they're still going to wear down a little bit more than a shoe with thicker rubber. So just because, like I said, the rubber hardness is higher doesn't necessarily mean it's as good for an outdoor court as something with more of a thicker or chunkier outsole tread pattern, which can kind of share the load. And getting into the fit of the two-way Volume 2, honestly, this is where I'm kind of disappointed in New Balance again. These are only coming in a standard width right now. I'm hoping in the future they'll come out with this in a 2E and a 4E width. However, for right now, it's just still standard D width. Now, if you're a narrow or medium foot, because the lockdown is so good, the uppers are so supportive, you can just go true to size. If you are a 2E and you want a 1-to-1 fit and don't mind breaking these in for a little bit, you can just go true to size. If you do want a little bit more forgiveness, you can go up a half size because these do lock you in pretty well, and if you're over 2E, you better go up that half size. I will say though, in terms of foot types that are good for this, a flat and a neutral foot are okay. However, if you are a high arched foot, I would definitely be throwing an orthotic in these, just because in the arch, it's not as supportive kind of in the forefoot or kind of mid to forefoot area where a high arched player really needs a lot of support. If you are a flatter foot player, I probably would also throw an orthotic in there, because I think over time your arch just might get a little bit tired in there from that bottom loaded shank. So as long as you don't mind customizing these a little bit with an insert, I do think these will fit most foot types. It's just, you gotta just kind of know that going into them. And in terms of best players, best positions, and just overall playability, the two-way Volume 2, these were a really fun shoe to play in and around the rim. It was really nice just to be able to plant and grip in tight spaces and still maintain a lot of balance. So I do think these are a really good pick for centers who don't necessarily need a lot of support or just can throw an orthotic in these. Someone that wants a lot of grip, a lot of balance, just to be able to really kind of plant and hold your position on the ground. Yeah, these aren't going to give you the biggest vertical assist, but if you can bring that to the table and just need something stable, then I do think these are one of the better pickups out there. I think in terms of perimeter playing, you know, they're not the most nimble shoes out there because the forefoot does scoop so wide. However, they do grip and plant very well. So if you are trying to make more ankle breaker moves or really trying to create separation for yourself, these will allow you to do that. And because the uppers were so supportive, you're not going to go rolling over them either. The one gripe I did have with the two-way Volume 1 was it wasn't the most stable shoe laterally. You know, for a New Balance shoe, I really thought it would be a really stable lateral shoe. The Volume 2 kind of fixes that. And I think just in terms of just overall playability, the Volume 2 is a huge step up from the Volume 1. You know, even though the uppers don't look like there's a lot going on in them, the engineering in them is intuitive enough that they really know what a basketball player needs out of these shoes. So I think if you're looking for something to plant, grip, and create space with, these are a great pickup, especially for the weight and balance, just overall profile of the shoe. But what I'm most interested to see is if you're looking to go more to the two-way Volume 2 line or the Kawhi 2 type shoe. So make sure you let me know in the comments down below. And if you want to see my deep dive and teardown of the Kawhi 2, make sure you click in this video up above and subscribe down below. Respect your rubber and foam. I'll see you in the next video.